Emma Collins thought it was just a stupid bar game when her friends dared her to kiss the most serious man in the room. He stood alone near the back wall, silent and stone-faced, eyes cold enough to freeze anyone who looked too long. He did not look like the kind of man who tolerated games. The kiss lasted only seconds, but when Emma pulled away, she felt his gaze follow her across the room like an invisible line had just been crossed. The next morning, she discovered the man was not just a mysterious single dad. He was a power man she should never have touched. Could one reckless kiss pull her into his world deeper than she ever imagined? The bar was loud and crowded, packed with people who had come to forget the week behind them. Music pounded through the speakers, voices rose and fell in waves, and laughter cut through the noise like broken glass. Emma Collins sat at a corner booth with 3 of her friends, nursing a drink she barely touched. She had not wanted to come out tonight, but Rachel had insisted, claiming Emma needed to stop hiding in her apartment like some kind of hermit. Emma did not think she was hiding. She just preferred quiet nights with a book over scenes like this. Rachel leaned across the table with that dangerous grin she always wore when she was about to do something stupid. She raised her voice over the music and said they should play a game. Emma already knew what kind of game Rachel had in mind. Truth or dare. The kind that always ended with someone doing something they regretted. Emma shook her head, but Rachel ignored her and turned to the others, declaring the game had officially started. Sarah and Jenna immediately agreed. Emma sighed and took a long sip of her drink, knowing she was outnumbered. The first few rounds were harmless. Sarah had to text her ex a ridiculous message. Jenna had to admit she once lied about liking someone's cooking. Rachel dared herself to order the strangest drink on the menu. Then Rachel turned her sharp eyes on Emma and asked her the question, truth or dare? Emma said truth, thinking it was safer. But Rachel shook her head and said, Emma always picked truth, and tonight she had to pick dare. The group had voted, and the vote was unanimous. Emma had to take a dare. Rachel scanned the bar with slow, deliberate movements, her eyes sweeping across the crowd like a predator searching for prey. Then she stopped. Her gaze locked onto something near the back wall, and her grin widened. She pointed across the room and told Emma to look at the man standing alone by the far corner. Emma followed her finger and saw him immediately. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and completely out of place in the chaos around him. He wore a dark jacket over a simple shirt, his hands resting at his sides, his posture rigid and controlled. His face was hard, all sharp lines and shadows, and his eyes were fixed on nothing in particular. He looked like he was waiting for something, or maybe just enduring the noise until he could leave. Rachel leaned in close. Emma had to walk over to that man and kiss him. Emma laughed and said absolutely not. But her friends kept pushing, their voices growing louder, and Emma realized they were not going to let this go. She downed the rest of her drink in one motion, stood up, and crossed the bar slowly. Weaving between people, her heart hammering against her ribs. The closer she got, the more she noticed about him. He was older than her, maybe in his mid-30s, with a rough kind of weariness that came from carrying too much weight for too long. His jaw was tight, his mouth a thin line, and his eyes never moved. Emma stopped a few feet away from him and suddenly had no idea what to do. She could turn around right now. She could tell her friends she chickened out. But backing down felt worse than going through with it. She took a breath, stepped forward, and said, "Excuse me." He turned his head slightly, his eyes shifting to her face. They were dark, almost black in the dim light, and they did not soften when they looked at her. He did not say anything. He just waited. Emma apologized in advance. Then she stepped closer, rose onto her toes, and pressed her lips against his. The kiss lasted only a few seconds. His mouth was warm and still, and he did not pull away. He did not push her off either. He just stood there, letting it happen, his body completely motionless. Emma felt a jolt of something she could not name, something that made her skin prickle and her breath catch. Then she pulled back, her face burning, and started to turn away. She mumbled another apology and explained her friends dared her to do it. She expected him to be angry or disgusted or at least annoyed. But when she glanced back at his face, she saw none of that. He was still watching her, his expression unchanged. But there was something in his eyes now, something sharper, something that felt like he was measuring her. Emma turned fully and started walking back toward her table. Her heart still racing. She could feel his gaze on her back, heavy and unrelenting, like a hand pressing between her shoulder blades. The feeling did not go away. It followed her across the room, lingering even after she slid back into the booth. Rachel was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Sarah and Jenna were both staring at Emma, like she had just jumped off a bridge. Rachel said it was worth it just to see the look on that man's face. Emma did not mention that the man's face had not changed at all. She tried to focus on her friends, tried to join in their laughter, and pretend everything was fine. But she kept glancing back toward the corner where the man had been standing. He was still there, still watching. Not in a creepy way. Not in a way that made her feel unsafe. Just in a way that made her feel seen. Like he was trying to figure something out. Like she had crossed some invisible line, and now he could not unsee her. Then he moved. He pushed off the wall and started walking toward her table. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Rachel noticed first and grabbed Emma's arm, her eyes wide. The man stopped at the edge of their booth, his presence cutting through the noise like a blade. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His shoulders blocked out the light behind him, and his eyes locked onto Emma with the kind of focus that made her forget how to breathe. When he spoke, his voice was low and steady, the kind of voice that did not need to be loud to be heard. He wanted to talk to her, not here, just for a minute. Emma's friends went completely silent. Emma felt her pulse hammering in her ears. She tried to apologize again, saying it was just a stupid game. He said he knew that. He did not care about the game. He wanted to talk to her anyway. Emma stared at him, trying to understand what he wanted. He did not look angry. He did not look amused. He just looked serious. More serious than anyone she had ever met. She slid out of the booth and followed him toward a quieter corner of the bar, away from the music and the crowd. He stopped near the hallway that led to the restrooms and turned to face her. Emma crossed her arms and asked what he wanted. He did not answer right away. He just looked at her, his eyes scanning her face like he was reading a book. Then he introduced himself. Dominic Russo. He was not offended by what she did. He understood it was a dare. But he did not think it was just a game. Not for him. Emma felt her stomach drop. Dominic said he wanted to get to know her. He did not meet people like her very often. People who did things without thinking about the consequences. People who were bold enough to walk up to a stranger and do something crazy just because their friends told them to. Emma laughed nervously. Dominic said it was just an observation. He asked if she would give him her number. Emma hesitated. She did not even know him. Dominic said that was why he wanted her number, so he could know her. Emma looked at him for a long moment, trying to figure out if this was real. He did not look like the kind of man who played games or wasted time on things that did not matter. He looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep, like he had been carrying something heavy for so long he forgot what it felt like to put it down. Something in his eyes stopped her from walking away, something that looked almost like hope, like he was asking her for something he did not think he deserved. She pulled out her phone and told him to give her his number instead. That way, she could decide if she wanted to call him. Dominic nodded and rattled off 10 digits without hesitation. Emma typed them into her phone. She might text him, or she might not. Dominic said that was fair. Then he did something she did not expect. He reached out and gently took her hand, not in a romantic way, but in a way that felt deliberate and serious. He appreciated what she did tonight, not the kiss. The fact that she came over here and gave him a chance. Emma did not know what to say to that. She just nodded and pulled her hand back. Dominic told her to be careful going home. Then he turned and walked toward the exit, his figure disappearing into the crowd. Emma stood there for a moment, staring at the space where he had been. She felt like something had just shifted, like a door had opened that she could not close. She walked back to her table, ignoring Rachel's barrage of questions. It was nothing. Just some guy who wanted to talk. But even as she said it, she knew it was not true. It was not nothing. It was something. She just did not know what yet. Emma did not text Dominic that night. The thought of deleting his number crossed her mind more than once. But when morning came, she found herself staring at the 10 digits saved in her phone, her thumb hovering over the delete button. She could not press it. Something about the way he had looked at her, the way he had asked for a chance, kept replaying in her mind. She put the phone down and went to make coffee, deciding she would deal with it later. 3 days passed before Dominic texted her first. The message was short and direct, nothing flowery or overly familiar. He asked if she remembered him from the bar and said he hoped she was doing well. Emma read the message twice, unsure how to respond. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Part of her was curious. She waited an hour before typing back a simple reply, saying she remembered him and asking how he got her number. He reminded her that she had taken his number, not the other way around. Emma felt foolish for forgetting. Dominic replied that he understood and said he would not push her, but he would like to take her to coffee if she was willing. Emma agreed to meet him 2 days later at a small cafe near her apartment. She arrived early and sat by the window, watching people walk by on the street. When Dominic showed up, he looked different than he had in the bar. The hard edges were still there, but he seemed more at ease in the daylight. He wore a dark sweater and jeans, and when he sat down across from her, he did not waste time with small talk. He thanked her for coming. He did not do this often. Emma asked what he meant. Dominic said he did not meet people outside of his usual circle. His life was structured in a way that did not leave much room for spontaneity. Emma asked what he did for work. Dominic said he managed a few businesses and left it at that. They talked for over an hour, the conversation moving from surface-level topics to things that felt more real. Dominic asked her about her job, her life, what she liked to do when she was not being dared to kiss strangers in bars. Emma laughed. She worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm and spent most of her free time reading or hiking. She asked if he had family. Dominic said he had a son, a little boy, 6 years old, named Michael. Emma felt something shift in her chest when he said it. Was he married? Dominic shook his head. His wife had passed away 3 years ago. He did not elaborate, and Emma did not push. She could see the weight of it in his eyes, the way his jaw tightened just slightly when he said the words. Emma said she was sorry. Dominic appreciated that. Then he said raising Michael alone had taught him to be careful about who he let into his life. He did not bring people around his son unless he was sure they were worth the risk. Emma asked why he was telling her this. Dominic wanted her to understand that if he was pursuing this, if he was sitting here with her right now, it was not something he took lightly. Emma did not know how to respond to that. She just nodded and sipped her coffee, feeling the weight of his words settle over her like a blanket. Over the next few weeks, Dominic continued to reach out. He texted her in the mornings, asking how her day was going. He called her in the evenings, their conversation stretching longer each time. He never pushed for more than she was willing to give. He never showed up unannounced or demanded her time. He was respectful in a way that felt almost old-fashioned. like he was courting her instead of just trying to sleep with her. Emma found herself looking forward to his messages, to the sound of his voice on the other end of the line. When she mentioned him to Rachel one night over dinner, Rachel immediately wanted to know everything. Emma said he was different. Rachel asked how. Emma said she did not know yet. Just different. The first time Emma noticed something was off was when they met for dinner at a restaurant downtown. Dominic had picked the place, a quiet Italian spot with low lighting and private booths. Emma arrived first and waited near the bar. When Dominic walked in, she saw the way the hostess straightened her posture, the way the bartender nodded at him without being asked. Dominic greeted them both by name and led Emma to a booth in the back corner. She asked if he came here often. Dominic said he knew the owner. But halfway through the meal, a man in a dark suit approached their table. He was younger than Dominic, maybe in his late 20s, with slicked back hair and a nervous energy that made Emma uncomfortable. He addressed Dominic with a tone that was part respect, part fear, and said there was something he needed to discuss. Dominic cut him off. Not now. The man apologized quickly and said it could wait. Then he glanced at Emma, his eyes lingering on her face for just a second too long before he walked away. Emma asked who that was. Someone who worked for him. What kind of work? Logistics. Dominic did not explain further, and Emma did not press. The second time was worse. Dominic had invited her to his house for the first time, a large property on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by tall trees and a black iron gate. Emma drove up the long driveway and felt her stomach tighten. The house was beautiful, all clean lines and modern architecture. But it felt too big for just two people. When she parked and got out of the car, she noticed a man standing near the front door. He was tall and broad, dressed in a dark jacket, and he was watching her with the kind of attention that made her skin crawl. Emma walked toward the door, and the man stepped aside without saying a word. Dominic opened the door before she could knock and smiled at her. He was glad she came. Emma asked who the man outside was. Security. Why did he need security? Just a precaution. Inside, the house was immaculate. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, expensive furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Dominic led her to the living room and offered her a drink. Emma asked where Michael was. He was at his grandmother's house for the weekend. Emma sat down on the couch and looked around, taking in the details. Everything in the house felt deliberate, like it had been chosen for a reason. There were no family photos on the walls, no clutter, no signs of a child, except for a few toys stacked neatly in a corner. Emma asked how long he had lived here. About 2 years. He had moved after his wife died, because the old house had too many memories. They talked for a while, the conversation flowing easily, but Emma could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Dominic was kind and attentive, but there was a tension in him she had not noticed before, like he was holding something back. Emma asked him directly what he did for a living. Dominic looked at her for a long moment before answering. He owned several businesses, most of them legitimate. Emma caught the word most and felt her chest tighten. What did he mean by that? Dominic said he was involved in things that were not always clean. He had power, the kind of power that came with risk. People respected him because they were afraid of what would happen if they did not. Emma felt the air leave her lungs. Was he telling her he was dangerous? Dominic said he was telling her the truth because she deserved to know. He had not been honest with her from the start because he wanted her to see him as just a man, not as what he was. But now that she was here, now that things were getting serious, he could not keep lying. Emma stood up. She needed to leave. Dominic stood as well. Wait. He understood if she wanted to walk away, he would not blame her. But he needed her to know that if she stayed, he would do everything in his power to keep her safe. Emma turned to face him. What kind of power did he have? Dominic said the kind that made people disappear when they crossed him, the kind that kept his son safe and his businesses running, the kind that meant he could never fully step away. Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She did not ask for this. She just kissed him on a dare. Dominic knew that. It was not her fault. But the kiss had changed something in him. It had reminded him what it felt like to want something outside of his world. He did not expect her to stay, but he hoped she would. Emma left that night without giving him an answer. She drove home in silence, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. This was too dangerous, too complicated, too far outside of anything she knew how to handle. But when she got home and climbed into bed, she could not stop thinking about the look on his face when he asked her to stay. It was not desperation. It was not manipulation. It was just honesty, raw and unfiltered. The next morning, she woke up to a text from Dominic. He understood if she did not want to talk to him anymore. He would not contact her again unless she reached out first. Emma stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed a reply. She needed time to think. Dominic said he would give her all the time she needed. 2 weeks passed. Emma went to work, came home, and tried to pretend everything was normal. But she could not stop thinking about him. She could not stop wondering what it would be like to be part of his world. Rachel said she was insane for even considering it. Sarah said she should run as fast as she could. But Emma could not shake the feeling that walking away would be the biggest mistake of her life. Not because she was in love with him. She was not sure she was. But because she had started this. She had walked up to him in that bar and kissed him, and now she felt responsible for whatever came next. She texted Dominic 3 weeks after their last conversation. She wanted to see him again. He replied within minutes. When? As soon as possible. They met at the same cafe where they had their first coffee. Dominic looked tired, like he had not been sleeping well. He sat down across from her and waited for her to speak. Emma said she did not know if she could handle his world, but she did not want to walk away without trying. Dominic asked if she was sure. Emma said no, but she was willing to find out. Dominic reached across the table and took her hand. He would protect her. Nothing would happen to her as long as he was alive. Emma believed him, not because she was naive, but because she could see it in his eyes. He meant every word. She needed him to be honest with her from now on. No more half-truths, no more hiding. Dominic said he could do that. Then he said something she was not expecting. Being with him meant she would become a target. People in his world would see her as a weakness. If she stayed, she would never be completely safe again. Emma pulled her hand back. Why was he telling her this? Dominic said because she deserved to know what she was getting into. He did not want her to make this choice blindly. Emma looked at him for a long time, trying to understand what kind of man told someone the truth, even when it might push them away. She needed one more thing from him. She needed to meet his son. Dominic said he could arrange that. If she was going to be part of his life, she needed to know what that life actually looked like. Dominic nodded. 2 days later, Emma met Michael for the first time. He was small for his age, with dark hair like his father, and eyes that were too serious for a 6-year-old. Dominic introduced her as a friend, and Michael shook her hand politely before going back to his toys. Emma sat on the floor with him and asked what he was building. A castle. Could she help? Michael said yes. They spent the next hour building towers and walls, and Emma watched the way Dominic looked at his son, the way his entire face softened when Michael laughed. She realized in that moment that Dominic was not just a power man, he was a father. And that changed everything. Emma started spending more time at Dominic's house over the following weeks. She came over for dinner, helped Michael with his homework, and slowly learned what it meant to exist in Dominic's world. It was not as dramatic as she had imagined. There were no shootouts or midnight deals. Most days were quiet. Dominic worked from home in a large office on the second floor, taking calls behind closed doors, while Emma played board games with Michael in the living room. Michael was shy at first, but he warmed up to her gradually. He showed her his favorite books, his collection of toy cars, the drawing he made at school. Emma found herself growing attached to the boy in ways she had not anticipated. But there were moments when the reality of Dominic's life became impossible to ignore. Men in dark suits would arrive unannounced, their voices low and urgent behind the office door. Dominic would emerge hours later, looking exhausted, his jaw tight, his eyes distant. Emma never asked what happened in those meetings. She knew he would not tell her, even if she did. One evening, Dominic came downstairs and found Emma reading on the couch. Michael had already gone to bed. Dominic sat down beside her. They needed to talk. Emma closed her book and turned to face him. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped his knees like he was trying to hold himself together. Something had happened. Someone had been asking questions about her. Someone from his world. Emma felt her stomach drop. What kind of questions? Questions about who she was, where she worked, how long she had been seeing him. It was a warning. A way of letting him know that people had noticed her. Was she in danger? Not yet. But the fact that people were paying attention meant she had become visible, and in his world, visibility was the same as vulnerability. What was he going to do? Dominic would make it clear that she was off limits. No one would touch her as long as they knew what it would cost them. Emma said that was not the same as being safe. Dominic agreed. Nothing in his world was ever truly safe. That was the price of being with him. Emma stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the dark trees that surrounded the property. Had he ever thought about leaving? All the time. But leaving was not as simple as walking away. There were people who depended on him, people who would not survive without his protection. His son was one of them. Emma turned to face him. Was Michael in danger? Dominic said Michael had always been in danger. That was why he lived the way he did. That was why there were men outside the house every night. That was why he could never let his guard down. Emma sat back down beside him. She did not know if she could live like this. Dominic understood. He would not blame her if she walked away. But then he did something Emma did not expect. He reached out and took her hand, holding it gently between both of his. He had been thinking about what kind of life he wanted for Michael. He did not want his son growing up in a world where fear was the only currency. Meeting Emma had made him realize that maybe there was another way. What did he mean? Dominic was considering stepping back. Not completely, but enough to give Michael a chance at something normal. Was that even possible? Dominic did not know. But he was willing to try if it meant keeping her in his life. Emma felt tears well up in her eyes. She did not want him to give up everything for her. Dominic said he was not doing it just for her. He was doing it for himself, for Michael, for the chance to be something more than the man people feared. Emma leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. She would stay, but she needed him to promise her something. She needed him to promise that if things got too dangerous, he would let her go. Dominic said he could not promise that. He did not know if he was strong enough to let her go. Emma said he had to be. The next few weeks were tense. Dominic started making changes, pulling back from the parts of his business that were most dangerous. He stopped taking certain calls, stopped attending certain meetings. Emma could see the strain it put on him. He was constantly on edge, waiting for someone to challenge his decision. One night, he came home late and found Emma sitting in the kitchen with Michael, the two of them eating ice cream straight from the carton. Michael was telling her about a kid at school who could solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute. Emma was laughing, saying she could barely solve one side. Dominic stopped in the doorway and just watched them for a moment. Emma looked up and saw something in his face she had never seen before. relief, like he had been holding his breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. But the relief did not last long. 2 weeks later, Dominic received a call in the middle of the night. Emma was staying over, sleeping in his bed, when she heard his voice through the door. He was angry. His words sharp and clipped. She got up and walked to the office, standing just outside the door. She heard him say he was done. He had given them everything they needed, and now he was stepping back. The voice on the other end of the line was muffled, but Emma could hear the tone. It was not happy. Dominic ended the call and opened the door, nearly running into Emma. "Go back to bed." Emma said she wasn't going anywhere until he told her what was happening. Dominic said the people he worked with were not happy about his decision to step back. They saw it as a betrayal. If he was not fully committed, then he was a liability. What did that mean? It meant they were going to come after him. Not physically. Not yet. But they would start dismantling everything he had built. They would go after his businesses, his reputation, his ability to protect the people who depended on him. What was he going to do? Fight. Emma said that was not good enough. Fighting meant staying in their world, and staying in their world meant Michael would never be safe. Dominic sat down in his desk chair and put his head in his hands. He did not know what else to do. Emma knelt down in front of him. There was always another option. He could walk away completely. He could liquidate the legitimate businesses, move somewhere else, start over. Dominic said it was not that simple. The people he worked with did not let people just walk away. Emma said then he would have to make them. He was powerful enough to negotiate his way out. He just had to be willing to give up everything. Dominic looked at her for a long time, his eyes searching her face. Did she really believe that? Emma said she did. She had seen the way people treated him. They were afraid of him because they thought he was untouchable. But fear only worked if he was willing to follow through on the threat. And if he was stepping back, then the threat was already gone. The only thing left was the illusion. Dominic said illusions did not protect people. Emma said neither did fear, not in the long run. The next morning, Dominic made a series of calls. Emma stayed downstairs with Michael, helping him with a puzzle on the living room floor. Michael asked where his dad was. Emma said he was working. Michael said his dad was always working. Emma ruffled his hair and said maybe that would change soon. Michael looked up at her with those serious eyes and asked if she was staying. Emma said she hoped so. Michael smiled and went back to the puzzle. Emma listened to the muffled sound of Dominic's voice through the ceiling. She did not know what he was saying, but she could hear the weight of it in every word. When he finally came downstairs, he looked 10 years older. He sat down at the kitchen table. He had done it. He had negotiated his way out. It had cost him almost everything: his businesses, his connections, his reputation. But he had made it clear that if anyone came after him or his family, the information he had on them would go public. It was not a perfect solution, but it was enough to buy them time. What happened next? They would move. Somewhere quiet, somewhere far away from the city. He had enough money saved to start over, to give Michael a normal life. Was he sure? Dominic had never been more sure of anything in his life. Meeting her had shown him what he was missing. And he was not willing to lose it. Emma reached across the table and took his hand. She would go with him. Wherever he went, she would be there. They moved 6 weeks later. Dominic sold the house and liquidated the last of his legitimate businesses. He kept a low profile, avoiding anyone who might recognize him. Emma quit her job and told her friends she was moving out of state for a fresh start. Rachel begged her not to go, saying she was making a mistake. Emma said it was not a mistake. It was a choice, and for the first time in her life, she was choosing something that scared her. The town they moved to was small and unremarkable, the kind of place where people did not ask too many questions. Dominic rented a modest house on the edge of town, nothing like the sprawling property he had owned before. Emma found work at a local marketing firm, and Michael started school at the elementary school down the street. Michael adjusted faster than either of them expected. He made friends, joined the soccer team, started bringing home drawings he made in art class. Emma watched him transform from a quiet, serious boy into a kid who laughed at jokes and argued about whose turn it was to pick the movie on Friday nights. Dominic spent his days fixing up the house, planting a garden in the backyard, learning how to live without the weight of power pressing down on him. It was not easy. There were nights when Emma would wake up and find him standing by the window, staring out at the street like he was waiting for someone to show up. She would walk over and take his hand, and he would turn to her and say he was fine. But she knew he was not fine. Not yet. He was still learning how to let go. But slowly, things started to change. Dominic stopped checking over his shoulder every time they went out. He started smiling more, laughing at Michael's jokes, asking Emma about her day like it mattered. One evening, they were sitting on the back porch, watching Michael chase fireflies in the yard with a neighbor kid. Dominic turned to Emma. He could not remember the last time he felt this light. Did he miss it? The power, the control, the fear? Sometimes. But what he had now was worth more than all of that. Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. She was glad he chose this. Dominic said he was too. Months turned into a year. Emma and Dominic built a life that felt normal in a way neither of them had expected. They went to Michael's school events, had dinner with neighbors, argued about whose turn it was to do the dishes. Michael started calling Emma by her first name, then one day slipped and called her something else. He caught himself immediately, his face turning red. But Emma just smiled and said it was okay. She was not trying to replace his mother. She would never try to do that. But she was here, and she was not going anywhere. It was boring and mundane, and exactly what they needed. Emma had not forgotten how it all started. She had not forgotten the dare, the kiss, the moment she crossed that invisible line. But she had stopped thinking of it as a mistake. It was not a mistake. It was the beginning of something neither of them had known they were looking for. One night, Emma and Dominic were lying in bed, the house quiet around them. Dominic turned to her. He wanted to ask her something. Emma said she was listening. Did she regret it? Any of it? The kiss, the decision to stay, the choice to follow him to this quiet town in the middle of nowhere. Emma thought about it for a moment, then shook her head. She did not regret any of it. It was the best stupid decision she had ever made. Dominic smiled and pulled her closer. He loved her. Emma said she loved him too. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, listening to the sound of the wind outside. Emma knew their life was not perfect. She knew there would always be a shadow hanging over them, a reminder of the world Dominic had left behind. But she also knew they had made it out. They had chosen each other, and that choice had changed everything. The kiss that started it all was not just a dare anymore. It was the moment two lives collided and decided to stay tangled together, and Emma would not trade that for anything.